Hello, my name is Dominique Cox. I'm a firefighter paramedic at Hardy County Fire Rescue, and today's presentation will be on common house fire prevention and safety tips for older adults. Older adults 65 and older are at greater risk for house fires. They are most threatened by death and injury by the fire among their age groups. Raising awareness among older adults is the key of reducing fire and injury. Understanding the common home fires is the first crucial step of preventing them. Year after year, common fires, kitchen, electrical, heating, and smoking are becoming the leading cause of most home fires today. Electrical fires. We use electricity every day. It makes our lives easier, but we take its power for granted. 10% of fires is caused by electricity. 18% is related to death, and 10% is civilian injuries, and $1.4 billion is property loss because of electrical fires. Some things we don't look at, but we notice is faulty wiring, as far as at the end of your cell phone cord, you see that little exposed wire, and we continue to use it, not knowing that that can cause a fire. Or when we plug something up, that cords get very heated, and the first thing we do is leave it. We continue to run appliances off of it, and we use it. Also, when we have excessive cords in one area and it's plugged up in a wall, the fact that all that cord is wrapped around and sitting in one's area, it produces a lot of heat. Yes, it will not combust right away, it will not spark right away, but over time, in that one spot, the cords is not stretched out long, it will cause a shortage and cause fire. Also, when you look at your sockets, some sockets are broken, some sockets need to be changed. We fail to change it, we just continue to use that socket. Sometimes when we plug things in and you see that little spark right there, it's a warning sign that that socket need to be changed, and we fail to do so. Extension cords is part of the problem of why house fire starts, and it's the dominant reason in this category. If you look in this area, how we have cords like this, and if we using it, we could also overcurrent the socket, meaning it's too many volts being used by this electric extension cord, that we need to just plug one thing in, a surge protector, and use multiple surge protectors for appliances. Steady connecting your printer, fish tank, computer. That surge plug helps produce the number of currents for that socket where we're not overloading that area. Also, circuit breakers, when the power go off, or when you put something in there and you notice that the power went off in that area, we overloaded the circuit breaker or the GTI circuit because it's too much currents going in there, and sometimes it produces a fire. So what we can do, be mindful, is extend the cords, plug one thing at a time. If you need to plug multiple cords in the outlet, get a surge protector, put those cords in there. Try not to overload the cords. If you have a cord and you notice that it's exposed wires, get rid of that cord, get a new one. Say if you plug something up and you wondering why it's overheated or it feels too hot, that cord is a bad cord. You want to replace it, get another one. Don't put tape over it, electrical tape. Some people put electrical tape over it to continue to use. That will cause a fire later on once that area get overheated. Cooking is the #1 causes of home fires and injuries. The leading cause of kitchen fires is unattended cooking. When you're cooking, some things you want to be alert to. If the stove is dirty, You want to wipe it down. The eye of the stove, you have to make sure you clean it prior to or after you finish once it's off and it's cooled down. Say when you're cooking, make sure the handles is away from your dominant area, or depending on how the stove is, it only could go one-sided. As you cook, make sure you're there for any frying, deep frying. If you have like sauteing, you want to be right there. If you have a crock pot, you want to come in and check it frequently. In case of a fire, say how the lid is on. If you notice any smoking coming from around the eye, turn the stove off. If you're able to move the pot, you can move the pot into the sink if it's nearby, or just by placing it in a different spot. If you're uncomfortable with doing so, just go out the house. If you have a door close by, you can go out the door. Make sure you close the door. If not, go out to the front door and protect yourself. One thing, just always, if you have like long sleeves, like I have long sleeves, but if I have anything hanging, I'm gonna make sure it's not where it can catch on fire. Using oven mitts, make sure it's away from it. If you waste something, try to get it up, like placing something that's wet next to it so it could smother out the fire. In the past few years, cooking has been the causes of death and injury. 49% results in home fire, 21% in death, and 44% in injuries. 66% of home fire starts with the ignition and food materials. So basically, like I said before, the stove, like most people have the coil still on the stove. So sometimes when you're cooking, food fall into the stove before or after, or if you notice some grease or steam coming up, that's things you can look for as you cook. 1% caused by closing, leading up to ignition and fire death. Crock pots is 61%. And then unintended equipment. So for example, if I was deep frying, I had to run somewhere, that accounts for 31% of home fires and 53% associated with death. Certain holidays that people mostly fry in the house is Christmas, Easter, and Thanksgiving. And if you ever deep fry, make sure you deep fry your turkey outside, away from something, so it won't catch on fire. Candles. We all have candles for whatever reason. Just to burn. Scented candles, we use it in our room for religious reasons, in the bathroom, even when hurricane season or a power outage. If we don't have flashlights, the first thing we do is light a candle. It is estimated that 7,610 structural home fires are started by candles per year. These fires causes annual average of 81 deaths, 677 injuries, and $278 million in direct damages. The peak season for candles is, depending on your religious belief, some people burn candles for a number of hours, a number of days. And around Christmas time, you see a lot of people go to Bath and Body Works and buy all these scented candles to burn. Candles should be kept 12 inches away from one another, and it should be placed in something sturdy like metal, ceramic holders, anything that's sturdy, because candles are open flame, and once you knock it over, it catches on something and it takes control of itself. Before even walking away, even if for a brief moment, make sure you blow out the candles completely, or you could take a towel that's wet and put it over the candle to smother the candle out. Make sure it's completely out. Some things to be mindful of if you go to sleep. Some things to be mindful of when you go to sleep. is placement of the candle where it's on your nightstand. Some people have a tendency when they roll over and sleep, you automatically reach your arm out, not realizing what's on your nightstand. So you must pay attention to making sure the candle's out, because sleeping is a factor of 10% of home candle fires and 15% associated with death. So once the fire keeps going, it normally puts you to sleep, in a deeper sleep, versus waking you up. Candles causes 2% reported of home fires, 3% of deaths, 6% of home fire injuries, and 4% of property damage. Roughly 1/3 of home candle fires starts in the bedroom. These fires associated with deaths and injuries. On an average, 21 home candle fires are reported daily, and 3 out of every 5 of home candles occurs when some form of combusted materials or things too close to candles. Heating. Heating is the second leading causes of home fires and injuries, and the third leading causes of death. Local fire departments respond to an average estimation of 48,530 fires involving heating equipment per year. Throughout the year, most states start their winter from as early as October, as late as February, and they bring in heaters to keep themselves warm, and they have them so close to them, or they so old or outdated where the wire is shortening or it haven't been cleaned, and as they go to sleep, it starts a fire. Instead of them waking up, they go to sleep. It puts them in a deeper sleep. So we have to be mindful of placement of the heaters and how old and how often they being used. For example, like in Florida, we don't really put on our heaters only in a cold month, and the minute we turn off the AC and kick in the heater for the heat, you get that burning smelling feel, and you're like, oh man, what's burning? But you realize that we don't turn on our heaters that often, so even then we should still clean out our duct vents. The fact that we all don't use heaters in our room. These fires, an annual loss of 500 civilians, 1,300 civilian injuries, and 1.1 billion in direct property loss. Half of home heating equipment fires are reported during the months of December, January, and February. Heating equipment is the leading cause of home fire death, and keeping anything that can burn at least 3 feet away from, like, the furnace, fireplace, wood, fire pits. Just keep things away from it and protect yourself. If it starts smoking or this unusual smell, make sure unplug it if you can, or keep an eye out on it. If you have like a small ABC extinguisher, if you notice a little flame, put it out right then and there. Get it out the house if you can. If not, call fire department if you feel uncomfortable, so they can remove it. Protect yourself first. Safety comes first. Safety tips. Safety tip number 1, keep low. The first sign of smoke or visible flame, the first thing you want to do, get as low as possible to the ground and crawl completely out the room or the house if you feel uncomfortable. Crawl, for people that's in apartments, crawl all the way out, crawl to the elevator or the stairway before getting up, and pull the alarm switch right there, the pull switch right there. If you at home and you can crawl out, close the door behind you, stand up, go completely out the house, to make sure your safety of yourself as well as family. Safety tip number 2, sound the alarm. Sounding the alarm basically is for people who should to this day have smoke detectors. If it's not going off, then you need to check the battery or sometimes even the connection to make sure that it works. You can either press the button or look for the blinking light or consistent sound. You may have to change the batteries or update your sprinkler, your smoke detector. Safety tip number 3 is drills. We all lived in our houses for years now, and believe it or not, as soon as smoke and fire come, you tend to knock over stuff, run over things, and you lost or trapped in your house. So walking around with the lights off just to see if you actually know the things in your house, the doors, the escape routes in your house, that's one way you can practice, but make sure you do it with someone, that way you don't get hurt. So prevention is the key, and safety also is the key. Open up is safety tip number 4. So over time we paint things or we nail things or we lock. So every now and then that unlocked window that you haven't opened in some time, go and open it to make sure you can fully open it. You check around the seals. If you painted recently, make sure you break that paint off, and any nails or safety locks on your windows, take it off, open and close that window to make sure you can. For doors, sometimes we have back doors that we don't use, or we start to clutter the area. Make sure that area is uncluttered, you can get out. And if you have a hard time opening that door, then you have to maybe check the wood, the seals around the door, check what's on the back side of the door or inside of the house. Move those things, open that door. That way you won't have no problem, because once the smoke and fire get too bad, you start at that point can't breathe, or you just so anxious to get out, you actually trying to force something open that's easily accessible for you to get out. And last tip is stay connected. Most of the time we all have our phones around us and we just leave. So make sure your phone has charge, if not enough to call 911. 2, make sure you know family and friends' phone numbers. So if you don't have your phone, and you can run to a neighbor, go by a neighbor, or even when help comes, you have someone to call.